Wow, so now Donald Trump is also hating on Jimmy Kimmel with Melania. If you remember earlier today, Melania posted about Jimmy Kimmel, who made a perhaps insensitive joke on air. We're gonna get to that later, but you might have already heard about this story. If you haven't, basically, Melania posted on her Twitter account, not Truth Social, on Twitter, about how she dislikes Jimmy Kimmel because of a joke he made before the press briefing shooting about her being an expecting widow. Maybe it was a little bit insensitive, and he definitely wouldn't have made that joke if this were after the fact of the shooting, but this was before the shooting when it couldn't have been predicted. So, I mean, I feel like it's fair. They're going after his job now, saying that because of what he's saying, that he's basically part of this political movement to just kill all the politicians and stuff for political violence. And we're going to talk about how that's hypocritical. We're going to talk about how Erica Kirk is being hypocritical. We're going to talk about everybody involved in this situation. But first, we're going to look at this press briefing from Karoline Leavitt. So let's get right into it.
First Lady Melania Trump has led all of the preparation for the state visit, which will honor the long-standing and special relationship. To be a joyful evening. He is willing to put his own life on the line to deliver on the promises that were fired before Secret Service swiftly moved us to safety backstage. The president's calm in the face of chaos, while yet another individual was trying to take his life, was really remarkable to witness, and it's something I will never forget. President Trump is fearless because he loves this country, and he is willing to put his own life on the line to deliver on the promises that he made to the American public who elected him here into the highest office in the land. And while we are blessed to have a fearless president, we should not live in a country where such constant fear of political violence permeates our society every single day. We can and we should have fierce disagreement in this country. As you all know, we disagree often, myself in this role and all of you in the news media, but those disagreements must remain peaceful. Debating, peaceful protesting, and voting are how we need to settle disagreements, not bullets. Nobody in recent years has faced more bullets and more violence than President Trump. This political violence stems from a systemic demonization of him and his supporters by commentators, yes, by elected members of the Democrat Party and even some in the media. This hateful and constant and violent rhetoric directed at President Trump day after day after day for 11 years has helped to legitimize this violence and bring us to this dark moment. Those who constantly falsely label and slander the president as a fascist, as a threat to democracy, and compare him to Hitler to score political points are fueling this kind of violence. The left-wing cult of hatred against the president and all of those who support him and work for him has gotten multiple people hurt and killed, and it almost did so again this weekend. When you read the manifesto of this shooter, ask yourselves, how different is the rhetoric from this almost assassin than what you read on social media and hear in various forums every single day? The answer, if you're being honest with yourself, is that there is no difference at all. Much of the manifesto of the would-be assassin is indistinguishable from the words that we hear daily from.
So here's a tweet from Trump where he calls for the hanging of members of Congress. He doesn't like political violence. All right, continue.
So many. For example, as the First Lady of the United States pointed out this morning, just 2 days prior to the shooting, ABC's late-night host Jimmy
Do you think she's including the time when Trump called for the hanging of members of Congress?
Kimmel disgustingly called First Lady Melania Trump an expectant widow. Who in their right minds says a wife would be glowing over the potential murder of her beloved husband? And having experienced what I did with the First Lady on Saturday night, I can tell you that she was anything but that. This kind of rhetoric...
This wife. Oh, wow. She does not like him. Oh, my days. Oh, my. Well, maybe that wife. Continue, Caroline.
Rhetoric about the president, the First Lady, and his supporters is completely deranged, and it's unbelievable that the American people are consuming it night after night after night. As President Trump said on Saturday night at this podium, we as Americans must recommit ourselves to resolving our differences.
I watch Jimmy Kimmel on YouTube because I'm not up at midnight. I've got to go to high school, so I watch him at about 6 in the morning when I wake up. So, actually, Caroline, that's not a factual statement. Continue.
Peacefully and uniting around the shared values that make our country great. The deranged lies and smears against the president, his family, his supporters have led crazy people to believe.
Actually, I remember him saying this is why we need a ballroom. And it makes me think about the idea of maybe if my school had a ballroom, we wouldn't have to worry about somebody coming in with an AR-15 and killing all of us.
Crazy things, and they are inspired to commit violence because of those words. It has to stop. And one more point. Saturday night served as yet another reminder of how important it is to fund the Department of Homeland Security. It is shameful that the United States Congress has kept this vital agency defunded for 70.
How is that correlated? How is that correlated? That's an FBI thing, dude. He comes from California, not like Mexico.
3 days, the longest shutdown of a federal agency in U.S. history. The Secret Service is a vital component of DHS. It has been directly impacted by this reckless political gamesmanship. Everyone in this room who was there on Saturday night witnessed the heroes of Secret Service and federal law enforcement jump into action in the face of grave danger and uncertainty. Agents put their own lives in harm's way to protect the president, the first lady, the vice president, and members of the cabinet. One agent can be seen in video footage literally jumping onto the stage, not knowing.
I do think it's important to mention, political violence is not okay in any case. I don't wish death upon Trump. I don't wish death upon J.D. Vance, Karoline Leavitt, any of these people. And I think it's great what these Secret Service members and law enforcement did on that night. So thank you for your service.
Where the attacker was or where the bullets were coming from at that point to place his body in front of the President of the United States. These men and women are heroes. They perform their duties daily, and they have children and families too. And they do it despite the political turmoil surrounding their agency. Make no mistake, this defunding of DHS should be a national scandal. If Republicans defunded DHS and we saw in another attempted assassination on a Democrat president, I would hope that the media coverage would be relentless and unforgiving, and I hope that it continues to be now. With the World Cup, America 250, the 2028 Olympics, and a presidential election all ahead, the Democrats' obstruction is placing an enormous and totally pointless burden on the Secret Service that can get more people killed. Enough is enough. There should be no further debate about this. Democrats need to do what President Trump has been calling on them to do for 73 days in a row and fund the Department of Homeland Security, period. This is a national emergency, and every member of Congress needs to put their country over party and get the Department of Homeland Security funded. With that, I will take a few of your questions today. Dan.
Okay, so now that we're done watching that, I kind of want to talk about what we just saw there. So Karoline Leavitt is talking about some, political violence caused by the left's rhetoric against Donald Trump is something awful. And, I mean, that's true, but at the same time, this is all because of President Trump, all right? I mean, all of this, political divide, all this divisiveness came from Donald Trump. This didn't exist in Bush's era or Clinton's era. This didn't exist back then. This was Trump. Including before he got into politics with the Five Gang or whatever they're called. Sorry, I don't really remember right now. I'll put it on screen. And calling for the birth certificate to be checked of Obama. I mean, it's just all hateful, is all that it is. It's just hate, and that's all that Trump is. So I think it's crazy for Karoline Leavitt to stand up here and say, the Democrats, they're calling for his death, when Trump has actively called for the death of Congress people, of some black kids, just a whole lot of people. The list goes on and on and on. I don't have time to pull out a list right now, but it's an extensive list, and it's just crazy to me that these people are just so stuck in their way of thinking of just me, And here's what I think I should say to them. Me. Because just cry about it, dude. Cry about it, Melania. Here's the tweet that I was talking about with Melania. It's up on the screen right there. You can pause and read it. Basically, she says to the gist of, this is an awful thing to say. Under no circumstances should it be said. Which is, it would be true if he said it afterwards, but he didn't. And, I mean, he's gonna make a joke about it again, but, like, it's crazy that this administration, who ran on the idea of bringing back free speech and decriminalizing comedy, they pretended to do that for about a month, and then in September, they went straight for Kimmel's job. They gave up on that afterwards, Brendan Carr, but I'd imagine tomorrow we're gonna hear about how he's off the air again. And I don't want you guys to forget that, CBS is pulling Colbert off the air in May. We're less than a month away from him being pulled off air, and I think it definitely has something to do with this administration. That's not a coincidence. So now we're going to look at a tweet that Trump put out about Jimmy Kimmel. You've undoubtedly already seen the Melania tweet. I don't think there's a reason to cover that, but we will be talking about Trump's tweet. So let's get right into that. All right, so I'm going to read this to y'all. So he says, "Wow, Jimmy Kimmel, who is in no way funny, as attested to by his terrible television ratings, made a statement on his show that is really shocking. He showed a fake video of the First Lady, Melania, and our son, Barron." I like how he's telling us their names as if we don't know it. Maybe it's that he doesn't know it. Maybe it's that he doesn't know the names. Maybe he's reminding himself. Like they were actually sitting in a studio listening to him speak, which they weren't and never would be. Then he stated, quote, "Our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania. How so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow." A day later, a lunatic tried entering the ballroom of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, loaded up with a shotgun, handgun, and many knives. He was there for a very obvious and sinister reason. I appreciate that so many people are incensed by Jimmy Kimmel's despicable call to violence. I'm not sure why he appreciates that. And normally would not be responsive to anything that he said, which is also a lie. He's repeatedly tweeted during Kimmel's showtime about Kimmel, which makes me think he watches Kimmel, and Jimmy Kimmel actually pointed that out, which I think is kind of funny. I'm not going to try to find the clip because he posts every day, but, and would normally not be responsive to anything that he said. But this is something far beyond the pale. Jimmy Kimmel should be immediately fired by Disney and ABC. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Which, I think we got to talk about the fact that Trump is currently calling for a private citizen to be fired over stuff that he said. Now, I want to point out again that this is the president who ran on the idea of bringing back free speech. And here we are. And currently, Trump is trying to get a private citizen fired for his remarks, which is kind of tying back to the Charlie Kirk situation. If you remember, people were saying some nasty things about how happy they are that Charlie Kirk was shot. Of course, that was not okay, and they shouldn't have been making those remarks. But you know what also shouldn't have happened? They shouldn't have been fired for it. I mean, that's infringement on freedom of speech. Unfortunately, freedom of speech protects hate speech. And I say unfortunately because hate speech is not okay. But I think it is important that it does protect it. And as for right now, it does protect it. So I think it's incredibly bad for the president to be calling for a member of the private sector to be fired over remarks that he made. And that already ties back to what I said just now about September and Charlie Kirk. So this is just really sad. I stand with Jimmy Kimmel. Tell me what you think in the comments down below. Please like and subscribe. It helps out the channel quite a bit, and it helps push back against MAGA, who's actively disliking my videos.